A few years ago, I was coerced, or rather forced, pick whatever euphemism you want for having to exercise diplomacy with people you wouldn't normally want to hang out with. Now, having to hang out with these individuals for just a few hours was already uncomfortable, let alone this entire lavishly extravagant day, which makes things a little more awkward. Now, somehow that conversation got around to race relationships in the United States, particularly as it relates to the African American community. Now, my contention was simple, that the United States really hasn't come to terms with slavery and its rather dark origins. And because we refuse to come to terms with it, we've kind of stifled ourselves and stunted our understanding. Now, these individuals were certainly not uneducated, and in terms of socioeconomics, they were pretty high on that strata. But I did notice when I mentioned Jim Crow, they had to kind of Google that, so make of that what you will. You see, ignorance can be a pretty feckless thing. Some people don't realize that they are, and the others, well, they really just don't care. So when you experience a film like Blackkklansman, the acuity of your perspective is increased incredibly, and you realize that events that took place in the past really haven't changed all that much. So Blackkklansman recalls the events of the first African-American Colorado Springs police officer to successfully infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. Now, that might seem rather bizarre, but I swear to you, this is a true story. Now, this is a Spike Lee joint, so you know that this movie is more than just a sum of its overall narrative. There's a lot of social commentary here, and while before you can just excuse it away as some things that happened in the past, I think given our current climate, that can no longer be said as true. Now, one of the things that I really loved about this film is its overall tone. Spike Lee managed to take some very heavy subject matter and weave it into this wonderful and intelligent satire about the American experience. This film is just as much about celebrating empowerment as it is exposing the darker side of human nature. One of the other wonderful things about this movie is that it was very self-aware of how much pop culture may have played a hand in the exploitation of the African American community and perpetuating stereotypes. I thought it was very powerful that the film actually opens up with a scene that came right out of the 1939 film Gone with the Wind. This, of course, was an indictment of early Hollywood and how they tended to romanticize the Civil War, especially on the Confederate side. But Spike Lee went a step further. He also deconstructed films like Shaft and Foxy Brown, and clearly how it affected the African American community, as exploitative as they were. Now, the casting in this movie is superb. John David Washington is amazing in this film, and he really steals the show. I definitely believe the chemistry between him and Laura Harrier's character. Adam Driver is awesome, and I'm so glad that he didn't get typecast in the Star Wars film. And I have to say, one other standout performance that really unnerved me was Topher Grace as David Duke. That was an incredible performance. The other thing about this movie is that it is completely unflinching, and the dialogue in this movie is very tough at times. I was thinking the whole time through the movie, my goodness, how the hell did they read for this film? Because, listen, it is raw, guys, and a lot of times I was really uncomfortable with just the brazenness of the dialogue in this film, but it is poignant and it is very powerful and absolutely necessary for this subject matter. Here's a funny thing about watching Blackkklansman. You are sitting in the movie theater and you're watching it and you are entertained, but for the briefest of moments you feel like you're being taken to another world, another time where these things happen. But there is this sense of tension as you get closer and closer to the end of the film, and by the time you get to the end of it, you're emotionally exhausted, and then it hits you. These are not things that are so far off in the distance, and this is not another world. This is actually happening in our society today, and interwoven into essentially what is a hard-hitting film is the realities of what happened last year in Charlottesville. And the finale of this film is really a punch to the proverbial stomach, guys. It really brings everything back to you, and some of the language that we hear in the film is really the same rhetoric that we're hearing from our elected officials today. And the sobering and frightening thought is that the reality for these characters in this film is really still our same reality today. I don't think that you go watch a film like Blackkklansman, I think you experience it. And what this really is an enema for the soul and the consciousness, and everybody needs to see this movie, especially now. Alright everybody, so that's my official review on the film Blackkklansman. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.